Zombie games are usually the bleakest games you can play. Zombie narratives are the perfect environment for tragic characters, hopeless situations, cruel leaders, and intense horror. This is the go-to structure for a lot of games that include zombies. Sure, some break the norm with a dash of comic relief or a pinch of gambling, but for the most part, zombie games include these pivotal pieces. As well as this, zombie games tend to have a strong stoic protagonist. These characters also tend to have tragic backstories that make the player feel sorry for them. Again, there are a few exceptions to this rule. Some zombie game characters are comic relief, while others are just really unlikable. It's very rare, however, when a zombie game goes against the grain with both of these elements, incorporating a fun, quirky style and a not-so-serious plot, with a protagonist who has no past trauma, or, well, any trauma really. A game that takes the cake for being the complete opposite of a traditional zombie game has to be Lollipop Chainsaw.
Party hard!
Created by Grasshopper Manufacture, Lollipop Chainsaw is a hack-and-slash zombie game that puts you in the shoes of Juliet, a teenager who is a part-time cheerleader and a full-time zombie hunter. The basic plot of the game revolves around Juliet saving the world from zombies and evil spirits, but the finer details really throw you through a loop, like having a head for a boyfriend, her whole family being zombie hunters, having a pervy old man as her sensei,
I need to talk to you.
and the main villain being an angry goth kid. Released in 2012 during a time when zombie games were dominating the market, Lollipop Chainsaw stood out among the rest for its unique take on the genre. It quickly amassed a loyal cult following thanks to its hyper-stylized visuals, intense combat, and Juliet herself.
Hey, baby.
Yes, this game is a gooner's wet dream, but is there more to Lollipop Chainsaw than the surface level visuals? I definitely think so, and so did Drogami Games, who were in charge of bringing the game back 12 years later with the Repop version of the game, making Lollipop Chainsaw available on PC for the very first time. Well, legitly. Pretty sure you could just emulate it, but I don't condone that sort of thing. This second life has brought with it many new gooners, fans, including myself. Despite living and breathing the Xbox 360, I never bothered to check out Lollipop Chainsaw, whether that was my small child brain not computing that a game with a girl as the main character could be good. Girl main character? Cringe. Or just because I was too lazy. Either way, I missed out big time. After playing it for myself for the very first time, I can't help but think, how is this series not bigger? I say series, it's only one game, but Lollipop Chainsaw really does deserve a sequel. There's a lot of great ideas, both well done and undercooked, and I can't help but feel a sequel could really tidy up some of the game's rougher edges. This Repop version of the game will definitely help boost the chances of a sequel. If Lollipop Chainsaw was released today as a brand new title, it would be a massive success. People love off-the-wall wacky games, and this game captures that so well. Plus, this game is the perfect definition of video game brain rot. Flashing lights, pretty short, pretty horny, and Nick himself looks a bit like a cancerous internet meme. People who have said it's just boobs and chainsaws are wrong, because there's only one chainsaw in the game. But Lollipop Chainsaw has so many layers like a birthday cake, which weirdly ties in with the game. As mentioned, Juliet is a cheerleader on her way to San Romero High School to meet with her boyfriend Nick. Unfortunately for Juliet, a zombie outbreak has broken out, and unfortunately for the zombies, Juliet is a seasoned zombie hunter, so she quickly works her way through waves of the undead. After getting past the undead in the streets, she meets with Nick in the park, only to find that the outbreak has reached the school, leading to Nick getting infected. A tragic end to a character we've only just met. With no options left, she decides to do what's best for Nick, which is turn him into a decapitated head. Better than being dead, I guess.
Check it out! I gave it a makeover!
I am not an it.
Or maybe not. After finding the school completely overrun by the undead and meeting Juliet's Nancy sensei, it's revealed that the world has been plunged into chaos thanks to this twinky goth kid, Swan. After Sensei fails to stop Swan, he puts the responsibility on the shoulders of Juliet and Nick. Well, not Nick, I guess, because he doesn't have any shoulders. Swan has unleashed 5 dark purveyors from Rotten World, spreading the zombie outbreak across the town, and it's up to Juliet to put these souls to rest, with the help of her crazy family of fellow zombie hunters, Sensei's ghost, and Nick.
Life is pain!
For a game that's kind of been presented as something so one-dimensional by a lot of people, the gameplay has a surprising amount to it. At first glance, I thought Lollipop Chainsaw would just be full of crude humour and crude moments. And yeah, there is plenty of that, but the gameplay is surprisingly deep. Not very deep, but surprisingly deep. The main draw for the gameplay is the seemingly endless hacking and slashing you do on all the zombies. You may think that combat just boils down to button mashing, but you'd be surprised to find out that, oh no, yeah, it pretty much does just boil down to button mashing. Juliet has a variety of moves she can use on zombies, most revolving revolve around her trusty chainsaw that can take out multiple zombies at a time. The aim of the game is to rack up high scores at the end of each stage, and while there are a few ways you can stack up points, killing zombies is obviously the best way to reach the top. The player can perform various combos that serve slightly different purposes, but I mean, they're all pretty much used to kill zombies. If you get sick of the default attacks, you can always buy more combos from the Chop to Shop store. This store acts as a hub for all of Juliet's shopping needs. Here you can buy all manner of combos that allow Juliet to perform even deadlier attacks. Medals are used as currency for this shop, and like a sexier, more unhinged Mario game, you can find coins pretty much everywhere, in the environment, in enemies, and when you kill 3 enemies at once. Gold medals are used to buy the basic stuff that'll help you out. Combos are purchased via gold medals, but there's plenty of other cosmetic items you can buy. Juliet has a wide range of costumes you can unlock that really show off her sense of style, and Nick is always there to be supportive of her different outfits.
I tried something new.
Holy shit.
Gold medals can buy many of Juliet's default skins, but platinum medals can be used to buy her more expressive outfits. Come on, surely no one's that thirsty to want to fork over 30 platinum medals for a skin. Is that a goth outfit? To say the game is strictly a hack and slash would be disingenuous. Do you hack and slash?
Yes! Yes! Yes!
But there's a few nuances to the gameplay that make it feel almost like a bunch of party minigames were crammed into one entity. Most of the game is about killing zombies, but Lollipop Chainsaw tries to spice up how the player interacts with the zombies. Sure, you always end up decapitating them, but given the game's relatively short runtime, the devs thought they'd make our experience memorable. Since each stage is practically one giant level, there are several interjections that break up the general gameplay. These act like minigames, and most of the stages include unique scenarios. Some have you play basketball, others have you ride across the map on your chainsaw, others have you play baseball, and some have you defend a certain point in the level. Though not important to the game's overall quality, with stages taking a long time to beat, the devs probably thought we needed something in between all the hack and slash moments, which is fair enough, but I really could have done without the basketball minigames. Whoever greenlit that, I hope you took a long hard look at yourself in the mirror. Nick can feel a little left out at times, since he's just ahead. By himself, he wouldn't be much use against the zombies, but thanks to a little bit of zombie hunting magic, Juliet has turned him into more than just a nobody. Get it? Nobody? Throughout Lollipop Chainsaw, there are several headless zombie bodies that Nick can take control of, and with the help of Juliet cheering him on, he can take on any task, no matter how impossible it may seem, like clearing rubble, helping Juliet perform an extra high jump, and even perhaps saving the world. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself with that last one. Nick can also be very helpful against zombies. Juliet can find or even buy Nick tokens. These tokens allow Juliet to perform special Nick moves. These moves can be used to either take out zombies or farm loot, or you can even just completely mistime your selection and end up getting nothing.
It's not my day.
I guess you could say it's gambling. No, please, I barely managed to get away from off the record. Since Chainsaw is in the name, it's only fitting that this be a huge focus of the gameplay. Apart from Nick, your chainsaw is the most important tool available to Juliet. Without it, you're pretty much screwed, as you can't kill zombies or open doors. And since there isn't much variety in terms of weapons available to Juliet, it's not called Lollipop AK-47 after all. The devs needed to implement a way that could let the player use Juliet's chainsaw in a variety of ways. This is where the upgrade system comes into play. Each present unlocks a new ability for Juliet to use. Most of them give Juliet a brand new use for her chainsaw, like letting you use it to dash quickly, letting you shoot bullets from it, or even letting you shoot Nick from it. It's a multi-purpose tool that never fails. Juliet can even use it to call her family members. Hey baby. Since Lollipop is also in the name, it's only fitting the devs try and fit this in somewhere, and they do this by giving Juliet a sweet tooth. Juliet's health bar is represented by lollipops, and the only way you can get health back is by finding lollipops. But they're not just for healing, they're also for collecting. Like a grown man obsessed with shiny Pokemon cards, Juliet can find rare golden lollipops throughout each stage that she can add to her collection. Just make sure you thoroughly look around before progressing, as you may miss one and won't be able to go back for it. Lollipop Chainsaw also decided to add quick time events. Every other encounter will have Juliet flipping over shit and sawing stuff in half to avoid death. The devs clearly loved Resident Evil 4 and decided to include the most tedious part of that game. Chopping through obstacles plays a big part in Lollipop Chainsaw. Now you may be thinking, oh, so you can get from A to B, right? Ah, my sweet naive friend. Chopping open doors has clearly been implemented to let the player have a sneaky glance. Ah, I know what you're doing, lads. You ain't fooling me. Also, the fact that you can get an achievement for aiming the camera up Juliet's skirt is kind of crazy. How did these devs manage to get the game out on time while only working with one hand? As well as being a hack and slash party game, Lollipop Chainsaw also kind of feels like a boss rush type game. Normal zombies take up most of the ranks, but every other encounter seems to include a zombie that has something more to them, whether they have a gun, a name, or are fat.
I got him right.
The constant inclusion of new enemies keeps the zombie slaying fresh, and tries to keep you on your toes with all the different attacks. The main big bads of the game are the Dark Purveyors. These act as Swan's generals in the zombie army. Each one acts as the final boss for each stage, and all embody a certain musical stereotype. You've got a punk zombie, a funk zombie, a psychedelic rock zombie, a rock and roll zombie, and a Viking zombie for some reason. Each boss has a unique musical score that fits their personalities, and their attacks tend to match their character tropes. See, the punk zombie is using words as a weapon. That is so clever and evocative. They tried to add something different, but they pretty much boil down to evade attacks, chainsaw them, repeat the process 2 more times, and then you're done. Without sounding too harsh, Lollipop Chainsaw's gameplay overall isn't anything to write home about. It's fun, mostly. The game won't be remembered for its gameplay though. The most enjoyable aspects of Lollipop Chainsaw were the writing and the overall design. Grasshopper Manufacture knew they wanted the game to be a bit adventurous with its humour, but it's no good a game just making sex jokes for the sake of it without making the characters funny and likeable, and making the dialogue feel authentic. That's why they hired James Gunn to help direct the voice actors and co-write the story with Masahiro Yuki. Lollipop Chainsaw could have really been one of those cringe over-the-top games that is all flash but no substance. But when listening to the characters' interactions, you can really see the love the team put into everything, and you can tell that everyone on board had genuine fun.
What's your favorite color, Nick?
Blue? No, green.
Awesome. I love learning about you.
I fucked up. It's yellow.
Conversations between characters never feel tiresome. I never found myself getting tired of hearing a character speak. They each brought their own unique quirks to the game, and just look at how stacked the cast for Lollipop Chainsaw is. Tara Strong as Juliet, Michael Rosenbaum as Nick, Linda Cardellini as Cordelia, Michael Rooker as the Viking bloke, Sean Gunn as Swan. You can definitely tell James Gunn is attached to this game. He brings these guys everywhere. This roster holds no punches with the snappy dialogue. Everything is so well delivered, and is without a doubt the most entertaining part of Lollipop Chainsaw.
Fantastic.
Some may say that's a bad thing, but I'm all for a game that has great dialogue because it gets you invested in the characters. Juliet and Nick could have been played completely generically. Juliet as the typical empty-headed cheerleader, and Nick as the simple-minded, sex-driven boyfriend, like something ripped out of a B-movie slasher. Yet the writing doesn't allow this to happen. Sure, they play into these roles, but they definitely feel like realistically written characters. You know, as much as a teenage zombie hunter and talking head can be realistic. Their relationship could have come across as really annoying too, since they're so close. Literally. Their constant interactions could have been more repetitive and felt forced, but their chemistry feels so genuine, and it's thanks to the voice actors. Their relationship feels genuine too. Just by hearing them speak, you can clearly tell the two care for each other.
I know it's stupid. We just started getting serious, but I wanted you to know. I know I've never said it or anything, but I kind of sort of, you know, love you. Oh, I fucking love you. Oh.
A lot of thought gone into the writing and the dialogue.
Their dynamic is also the root of most of the humour in the game too. Nick's grounded and often nihilistic viewpoint contrasts well with Juliet's never-wavering positive attitude, and the pair both go through character development. Of course, the game isn't always deep. The majority of the characters are there to make you laugh, or at least chuckle. Unsung heroes of the story are definitely Juliet's family. These guys are just as positively unhinged as Juliet, and never miss an opportunity to rag on Nick for being ahead.
You told me all about it. Failed to mention the disability.
The game uses several techniques to convey humour, such as out-of-pocket dialogue,
I need another tampon.
as well as fourth wall breaking. Though often seen as lazy forms of comedy, I think they work so well because they're never overly obnoxious. It's also very sweet seeing them all wish Juliet a happy birthday. Much like the humour and voice acting in Lollipop Chainsaw, the soundtrack gives the game such a bizarre tone. Though the gameplay in theory is pretty grotesque as you're constantly beheading undead and fighting bosses, the soundtrack feels like it's been ripped straight out of a rhythm game. A lot of the score is inspired by pop punk, and thanks to the game's overall style and protagonist, it feels like the music is constantly on loop in Juliet's head as she mercilessly puts down zombies. It reminds you that this game isn't that serious. It's supposed to be a good time. Despite Juliet's innocent appearance and hobby as a cheerleader, she is a zombie hunter at heart, and the other parts of the soundtrack capture this too. The boss fights always make it feel like Juliet is in complete control. A lot of them are vicious, yet it never feels like you're on the back foot. It's a nice change of pace for a game about zombies not to be totally soul-crushing, bleak, and dystopian. Platinum medals can also be used to buy music tracks, allowing you to jam out to all kinds of music. If you're looking for really fitting music to play, I highly recommend listening to the Doom 2016 soundtrack while playing. They go pretty well together. Probably the most recognisable feature of Lollipop Chainsaw to most people who haven't played the game is its art style. It blends cartoonish visuals with comic book graphics, making it feel like a game ripped straight from the PS2 era of gaming. Despite me having no nostalgia for Lollipop Chainsaw, the visual design of the game brought me back to a time period that has long since passed. Though a completely dead trend at this point with countless developers using innocent visuals for a violent game, Lollipop Chainsaw has to be congratulated as one of the first to pull it off right. Definitely not the first, I'm not saying it was the first, but in terms of a hack and slash zombie game, it blends style and substance pretty well. The visuals also add a lot to the humour. Watching zombies get murked, only to be followed by sparkles and rainbows, never fails to be entertaining. Another reason for this is because it often acts as a way of showing you how well you're doing. When killing 3 or more zombies at once, the screen will go crazy with colours and effects, encouraging you to try and do it again and again. It definitely feels like they focused more on making the effects and the characters pop on screen, rather than the actual levels themselves. While not terrible, they definitely feel generic, but it does make the characters and visuals feel more in your face. Continuing on with the characters and the story, Juliet travels around the town, clearing out the zombies and ridding each area of a dark purveyor. After chopping Zed, slicing Viking Bloke, halving Mariska, dividing Josie, and splitting Lewis. Fucking Lewis. It feels like Nick and Juliet are on the brink of victory. After all, what can a stinky little goth kid like Swan actually do? Well, the whole time he's actually been playing 4D chess, as he was banking on Juliet killing all of the dark purveyors in order to complete his ritual that will summon the ultimate zombie weapon. But why is he doing this? Why has Swan damned the people of Earth and decided to leave them to the mercy of Rotten World?
Rot away. Rot.
Damn, bro's down bad for Juliet. You know it's bad when you've been cooked by a literal head. He's so petty he's willing to shoot his own head off to summon Killer Billy, the zombie king essentially, that kind of resembles Elvis Presley. Sensei contacts Juliet from the dead and gives her some advice on how to take out Killer Billy. Juliet and her family prepare for one final attack, with Juliet's father going as far as sacrificing himself to give Juliet an opening. Her and Nick enter the belly of Killer Billy, discovering his heart with Swan's headless body attached to it. Sensei then reveals some devastating news to the couple. Juliet must place Nick's head on Swan's body to create a Nick bomb, killing both Killer Billy and Nick in the process.
Sensei? I can't hear you!
I'm finished.
Despite Juliet being distraught with the news, Nick welcomes the chance to finish the fight. Throughout the game, Nick has been on a character journey, initially coming across as quite selfish and cowardly during the first part of the game. Then he slowly becomes saddened by the fact that he feels useless, and you can't blame the guy. Juliet and her family are highly skilled zombie hunters, and the fact that he's essentially just a morbid keychain is really disheartening. The final straw comes when Juliet's family treats him like an object, rather than a living, breathing head. It even begins to take a toll on his and Juliet's relationship. He becomes snappy and almost depressed, wishing for death and asking Juliet to leave him behind. Despite the situation being sad, it does lead to one of the funniest interactions in the game.
Yes, Sensei.
Yes, Sensei.
Really, Nick? The fate of our whole town is in the balance and you're gonna take the time to mock me? I just heard you. You're right
It was the
there.
wind or something.
As morbid as this may be, Nick finally comes to terms with who he is, and realises that he is special after all. He gracefully accepts his part to play in the grand scheme of the universe, and has a tearful goodbye with Juliet. Come on, a game called Lollipop Chainsaw can't end like that, surely. The universe recognises Nick's selflessness and decides to throw him a bone, sending him back down to Earth with a brand new body. Juliet and Nick share a real embrace after what feels like forever and... Yeah, the sensei gave Nick his body. Well, better than nothing, I guess. Juliet's dad also survived blowing himself up somehow, although sadly, one of his balls didn't make it. After sitting through an unskippable credit sequence, the gang heads home for Juliet's birthday. There Nick finally meets Juliet's mum, but it turns out she's been zombified.
And by dinner, I mean you.
Are you taking the piss? Luckily that's the bad ending you get after not saving every single savable survivor. Come on game, I only missed one. Fair enough, looks like I'm going back in. Saving that survivor was worth it though, as I finally got a happy ending. Not that kind of happy ending, I got to watch them eat birthday cake. I really enjoyed Lollipop Chainsaw. I thought it was a fun, quick experience that didn't really get old, but it is very rough around the edges, and if there ever was going to be a sequel, the devs would need to sort some things out. I wasn't a fan of stages being one big level. I feel like the prologue is a little bit disingenuous, as it makes it seem like like the game will be made up of much smaller levels for each stage. This definitely would have helped to make each stage feel less jarring and given the game more replayability, because replaying a really long level isn't that appealing. Smaller levels would have also encouraged the devs to be more creative with each location as well, spicing it up every now and then, rather than marathoning through a bunch of locations in one go. The game itself is also very linear. There isn't much in terms of exploration, and at times it feels like you're on rails, never able to go anywhere other than the pre-existing path that's been made up for you. I'd love a sequel to potentially be an open world title, allowing the player to explore the world and get more immersed in the city. This could also make for more interesting side quests, instead of just having you save out-of-pocket survivors.
Juliet, I am so totally gonna masturbate to you tonight.
Despite Lollipop Chainsaw's flashy appearance, the game at times can be very buggy. I'm not sure if this was ever the case for the PS3 and Xbox 360 version of the game, but the version packaged with the Repop version for PC is still buggy, and it's been out since September. Occasionally when aiming in with the chainsaw blaster, you get stuck in place, which makes boss fights especially annoying. Speaking of bosses, I wish we got more time with them. Though they are portrayed as special zombies, we never get to see any of them really shine, and they only ever appear very briefly in a cutscene and when you fight them. The villain should definitely get more spotlight in the sequel. In theory, a sequel couldn't really work without a large overhaul to the gameplay, because of course Nick now has a body, so maybe the devs could come up with a new sidekick for Juliet to have. Maybe they could give her a rabid chihuahua. But this is a good thing. Sequels should always aim to evolve the gameplay. Change should be welcomed. Unless the changes are complete dog shit, then don't even bother. I also feel like the Repop version is also incredibly deceiving. The name makes it seem like the game itself is getting remastered, but all it really does is port the censored Japanese version of the game to the rest of the world. And I'm not being funny, but why would you want to play that version if you had the choice of the two? It strips away a lot of the violence, and goes against what Gun and Masahiro Yuki planned for the game. The whole appeal was to have a cutesy looking game that was hyper violent. The game doesn't work if it's overly cutesy, it comes across as obnoxious. Repop? More like Depop. Let's be real, a sequel couldn't work without Gun and Masahiro Yuki coming back and crafting some more god tier dialogue. Tara Strong also carried the game with her performance as Juliet. I think it's about time we recognise Juliet for the goat she is, and put her among the greats of zombie game protagonists. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist.